Welcome, fellow dreamer. Tonight, I invite you to step back with me through the fog of time, into the narrow, bustling streets of a medieval city, a place of clattering hooves, smoky hearths, and whispers in shadowed alleys. But be warned, this journey isn't wrapped in fairy tales. It's a glimpse into a world where survival wasn't guaranteed, and just making it through the day could be a challenge of its own. This is a story of grit and grime, of crowded markets and deadly misunderstandings, of chamber pots overhead and no such thing as a quiet night. A world full of life and danger behind every crooked timber frame. Before we begin, take a moment to dim the lights, find a comfortable place to rest, and allow yourself to drift into the rhythms of a city long past. I created this video to help you relax, unwind, and gently fall asleep, while exploring a part of history that's often left out of bedtime stories, the real Middle Ages. And as always, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Let me know in the comments. It's a joy to see how these stories bring dreamers together across the globe. If you enjoy this journey into the darker corners of the past, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you'll always have a place to return when you're ready to fall asleep to history. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's begin our unlikely adventure into a day you probably wouldn't survive in a medieval city. Welcome to a journey back in time, where today's bustling metropolises find their ancestors in the medieval cities of the past. Imagine yourself standing amidst the maze of narrow cobblestone streets, lined with buildings that seem to huddle together for warmth against the often chilly air. As you walk through these ancient thoroughfares, you become one with the crowds of people, merchants haggling over prices, children darting between legs with the energy only the young possess, and the occasional clang of a blacksmith's hammer ringing through the air. This is the vibrant yet challenging life in a medieval city. Medieval cities were bustling centers of trade, culture, and often conflict. Unlike today's cities, which benefit from centuries of technological progress, medieval urban centers were hubs of both opportunity and adversity. They were the places where peasants might find work beyond the field, where goods from distant lands were bought and sold, but also where disease often spread unchecked, and living conditions could be extremely harsh. At the heart of any medieval city was its market, a place of social and economic life. Markets were often held in large squares, with stalls and booths set up by day and dismantled by night. These markets were more than just shopping areas. They were social centers where news was exchanged, disputes were settled, and communities gathered. But while they provided a vital source of food and goods, they also underscored the societal divides, as wealthier citizens would purchase exotic spices and fine cloth, while poorer folks often had to make do with the basics. The sheer sensory overload of a medieval market is hard to comprehend. The air would be filled with the pungent smells of raw fish, the sweet aroma of baking bread, and the various scents of livestock. Noise, too, would have been a constant companion. The call of vendors advertising their wares, the chatter and laughter of townsfolk, and the cries of children playing their timeless games. Despite this vibrant atmosphere, life in a medieval city was far from safe. Overcrowding was a serious issue, with people living in closely packed conditions that today would breach any health and safety regulations. Buildings were often made of timber, not only due to the availability of materials, but also because they were simple to construct. However, this meant that cities were tinderboxes, with fires spreading rapidly through these wooden structures. Indeed, devastating fires could raze entire districts, leaving countless citizens homeless and destitute. Another prominent feature of medieval cities was their defensive walls. These fortifications were not merely for show. They were the city's line of defense against the myriad threats that could arise. They could face siege from rival cities, or, during times of instability, from marauding bandit bands. This sense of constant vigilance against external threats added another layer to city life, where peace was valued but war was always prepared for. Moreover, cities were places where the social hierarchy was palpably felt. Society was rigidly structured, with nobility and clergy occupying positions of power and privilege, while the vast majority were commoners, often leading hard lives. Social mobility was limited, and one's place in society was largely determined by birth. Although rare, there were exceptions where a commoner might rise through the ranks, often through extraordinary service, or, particularly in mercantile cities, through amassing significant wealth. However, there was a sense of community driven by necessity. Guilds and trade associations became central, fostering a bond among workers and offering a semblance of welfare and protection. These guilds oversaw the training of apprentices, maintained crafting standards, and took collective action to defend their interests against both competition and regulation. Perhaps most striking to a modern observer would be the omnipresence of the church. Faith was a cornerstone of medieval life, permeating everything from daily routines to long-term plans. Churches were not just places of worship, but also served as community centers, places of education, and even as places of refuge in times of trouble. The influence of the church extended well beyond spiritual matters, affecting law, politics, and societal norms. Yet, for all their vibrancy, medieval cities were perilous. Disease was an ever-present risk. Epidemics, such as the Black Death, swept through urban centers with terrifying speed, exacerbated by the lack of sanitation and the close quarters in which people lived. Medical knowledge was rudimentary at best, and illnesses that are minor today could be deadly. As you can see, living in a medieval city was a complex balance of opportunity and risk, community and conflict, innovation and tradition. In this series of sections, we will delve deeper into the aspects of life that defined these cities, from their economic structures to the stark realities of daily living conditions. By painting a vivid picture of medieval urban life, you'll understand why surviving a mere 24 hours in such a setting would be quite a feat. Having explored the bustling yet challenging life of a medieval city through this introductory look, we now have a foundation to further explore the intricacies of life during this enigmatic era. Let us proceed to the ensuing sections to uncover the vivid details and understand the resilience required to thrive in such an environment. Sanitation and hygiene. As we delve into the specifics of medieval urban life, understanding the basic living conditions of the time is crucial. The medieval city was a marvel of human society, bustling with activity and innovation, but plagued by serious public health concerns. Embodying the life of a medieval city dweller sheds light on the critical issues of sanitation and hygiene that defined the era, and how those issues posed one of the greatest risks to urban living. In medieval cities, sanitation was rudimentary at best, and often outright non-existent. Streets were narrow and often filled with refuse, as there was no organized waste disposal system. Residents would dispose of their waste, both human and household, by simply tossing it into the streets, where it would accumulate until washed away by rain or gathered by pigs that roamed freely, scavenging for anything edible. These waste-covered streets were breeding grounds for all manner of disease. With the lack of a modern sewage system, the risk of contamination was ever present. Open sewers ran along the sides of streets, and public latrines were few and far between, leading to unsanitary living conditions that defy modern comprehension. The proximity to waste, coupled with the lack of efficient water supply systems, made the medieval urban environment a perfect storm for the spread of illness. In this era, knowledge about germs and the causes of disease was minimal at best. Theories of miasmas, or bad air, dominated the medical and public belief systems. People believed that these foul smells carried diseases. But without an understanding of bacteria or viruses, efforts to combat disease were largely ineffective. Instead of addressing the root causes of illness, such as contaminated water sources, attempts were often made to mask the odors or to flee urban centers entirely when diseases broke out. The water supply of a medieval city was often compromised. Wells, rivers, and streams served as primary water sources, but they could easily become polluted by upstream waste or runoff from the city itself. Boiling water to kill pathogens wasn't a widespread practice for drinking water, leaving city dwellers vulnerable to waterborne diseases such as cholera and dysentery. Personal hygiene was another area where medieval life starkly contrasted with today's standards. Bathing was not a daily ritual. In fact, full immersion bathing was sometimes viewed with suspicion. People would wash sporadically, and often with little more than a basin of water or a cloth. Bathhouses, where available, offered public baths, but they also doubled as social centers, which could complicate efforts to manage infectious diseases. These houses often housed more than just bathing facilities. They were locations for relaxation and even, sometimes, illicit activities, drawing a wide range of people together in close quarters, further aiding the transmission of infections. Despite these realities, it is a mistake to assume that medieval people were unaware of cleanliness. Practices varied widely depending on region and socioeconomic status. Wealthier individuals often had better access to bathing facilities and cleaners. Herbal remedies and oils were used to mask body odors, and laundry, though laborious, played an important role in personal sanitation. Another tool in combating filth was the guild. Trades related to cleaning and hygiene were structured through guilds. Barber surgeons, responsible not just for haircuts, but also for rudimentary surgical procedures and dental care, played a vital role in managing personal care. However, the combination of inadequate tools and limited knowledge often meant that more harm than good was done. Efforts to combat the health risks posed by urban environments saw varying degrees of success. Some cities enforced rudimentary health ordinances, such as banning certain individuals or trades from working within the city walls to reduce the risk of spreading disease. Attempts were made to control the flow of people and goods at city gates, especially during plagues, but these often came too late to prevent the spread of disease. In a time before antibiotics and vaccines, sickness was frequent and feared. Epidemics swept through cities with alarming regularity, the most notorious being the Black Death that devastated Europe in the 14th century. Such pandemics fundamentally altered society, bringing about changes to economic structures, labor dynamics, and even religious views. For all the challenges presented by the environment, many medieval cities survived and even thrived. Their enduring legacy is a testament to human resilience and adaptability. Urban centers were places of learning and innovation where, despite all hardships, society found ways to progress. Reflecting on the sanitation and hygiene of medieval cities offers significant insights into the lives of the people who inhabited them. Surviving the complexities of sanitation-related hurdles was a daunting affair, often boiling down to luck as much as to efforts. As we continue exploring medieval urban life, it's invaluable to recognize the resourcefulness required to navigate such a world successfully. Having examined these pivotal aspects of sanitation and hygiene, in the next section, we broaden our understanding by investigating the living conditions that further impacted daily life in medieval cities. In the tapestry of medieval city life, food and diet played a crucial role in shaping not only daily routines, but also the health and social structures that defined the era. Exploring the nuances of the medieval diet reveals much about the opportunities and limitations faced by city dwellers in their quest for sustenance in an era dominated by agricultural cycles and unpredictable food availability. The medieval diet was largely dictated by the seasons and influenced by regional availability. This dependency on local produce was a significant factor shaping dining habits, while wealthier individuals could afford a more varied diet, drawing on imported goods and preserved foods. The typical city dweller's diet was far more restricted, constrained to the staples of bread, ale, and pottage. Bread was the fundamental food source for people of all classes. It was often made from wheat in areas where it was readily available, but more commonly from rye, oat, or barley in regions with poor soil conditions or harsh climates. The quality and type of bread directly reflected one's social status. Coarse, dark bread was common for the masses, while the wealthy enjoyed fine white bread. Ale served as a principal beverage and was consumed daily due to the scarcity of clean water. This ale was not the strong brew enjoyed in modern times, but a weaker, often lower alcohol content drink suitable for all ages. Brewing was traditionally a household practice, with many families brewing their own for consumption and trade. The skill of brewing and the social aspect it encouraged was vital for building relationships and communities within medieval cities. Pottage, a type of vegetable stew, was another staple, offering a means to use whatever ingredients were seasonally available. It often contained root vegetables and herbs, and on occasion, small amounts of meat or fish, depending on one's status and the abundance of resources. It represented resourcefulness in the face of scarcity, embodying a communal and flexible approach to dining born out of necessity. Meat was a luxury for the majority of medieval city inhabitants and was typically reserved for special occasions, festivals, or for those of higher standing. When consumed, it was likely to be pork or poultry, as these animals were easier to raise and maintain within the confines of a city. Game and beef, considered more prestigious, were rare for lower classes, primarily due to cost and availability. Food shortages were a common threat, particularly in cities that depended heavily on their immediate hinterlands for supplies. A poor harvest could lead to famine, forcing city dwellers to adapt quickly. The trade networks that many cities established with rural areas were crucial for survival, as they enabled a flow of goods essential for maintaining an acceptable level of provision during lean periods. Seasonal fairs and markets were vibrant centers of trade, ensuring the circulation of not just local produce, but also imported goods, such as spices, salt, and dried fish, which spiced up the otherwise monotonous diets. These imports, however, commonly remained beyond the reach of the average citizen, who had to contend with diets that shifted with the rhythms of agriculture and trade. Religion and cultural practices profoundly influenced dietary habits and restrictions. Fasting and abstaining from certain foods during religious periods were common practices that shaped what was available and desirable at various times of the year. These restrictions extended beyond personal belief systems and influenced broader market activities within medieval cities. Fishing, although predominantly a rural activity, played an essential role in supplementing diets in cities situated near water bodies. Fish, both fresh and preserved, offered a protein source that could be consumed more regularly than meat, providing valuable nutrition, particularly during fasting periods when meat was forbidden. The communal aspect of food is not to be overlooked. Markets were more than places of transaction. They were vibrant hubs of social interaction and exchange of culinary traditions. Techniques for preserving food, such as salting, pickling, and smoking, encouraged a dynamic exchange of knowledge and helped city folk withstand the vagaries of supply and demand. Ultimately, the medieval diet was a testament to resourcefulness amidst constraint. Every meal underscored the ingenious ways in which city dwellers adapted to their environment's challenges. The vigorous marketplace exchanges and the festivities accompanying bountiful harvests testified to the essential relationship between food and community. In light of this, food was more than mere sustenance in medieval cities. It was a unifying force that shaped cultures, fueled economies, and reflected the delicate balance of medieval life. As we continue our exploration into work and economy, we appreciate the intricate interconnectedness of food in the cultural, social, and economic tapestry of medieval urban life. Understanding the living conditions in a medieval city is crucial to appreciating the myriad challenges its inhabitants faced daily. As urban populations swelled in these cities, the realities of physical space and the limitations of construction knowledge at the time created environments that modern humans would find challenging, if not outright hostile. In a medieval city, housing varied dramatically depending on one's social and economic status. The wealthy could afford to live in larger, more luxurious homes. These residences, often built of stone rather than wood, signified prestige and offered a degree of comfort that was unimaginable for most city dwellers. Not only did they provide more space, but they also offered protection against the ever-present threat of city fires. For most people, however, living conditions were far less comfortable. Residences were often small, cramped, and poorly constructed, typically from timber and thatch, which were much cheaper materials. The risk of fire in these structures was high, and when conflagrations occurred, they often spread rapidly, contributing to the transient nature of many urban populations. The lower classes, including apprentices, servants, and laborers, frequently rented single rooms in these overcrowded boarding houses. Families, regardless of size, often lived in one-room accommodations, which served as living room, bedroom, and kitchen. Privacy, as we understand it today, was a luxury rarely afforded to anyone outside the upper classes. This necessity fostered a communal atmosphere, as individuals and families frequently shared living spaces with others, creating tightly knit communities within the broader city. Acquiring and maintaining housing was a constant challenge. The population density in medieval cities reached staggering levels, given the infrastructure. Streets were narrow and winding, leading to peculiar patterns in which the homes emerged. Standardized construction rules were largely non-existent, leading to an urban landscape that was as haphazard as it was dense. The limits of medieval technology and materials frequently mandated innovative approaches to city living. This meant common water sources, shared ovens, and centralized markets where resources were pooled. Such practices were largely out of necessity due to spatial limitations, but also fostered an important sense of community that we can observe in historical records and accounts. Medieval life was dictated by the sun, as artificial lighting was rudimentary. Candles and rushlights were prohibitively expensive for many, meaning the setting of the sun often meant the end of the day. This timetable significantly shaped social activities, work, and community engagement within the city, influencing everything from market hours to public gatherings. One of the most visually striking aspects of medieval cityscapes was their verticality. As public spaces and city boundaries became crowded, inhabitants built upward. This led to multi-story buildings that leaned precariously into narrow streets. Such architectural styles, while innovative for their time, led to dangerously compromised structures, partially because craftsmanship and regulations were inconsistent. Despite the consternation brought by building limitations, these crowded housing arrangements imparted a shared identity among residents. Narrow alleys and crammed living resulted in high community interdependence. While such proximity could foster tension, it more frequently resulted in strong bonds and mutual reliance, as neighbors depended on one another for skills and goods. The city structure fostered bustling inner courtyards, more than just mere architectural features. These spaces transformed into gathering places where individuals socialized and shared resources. Courtyards also offered a small respite from the cramped interiors, serving as safe havens for children to play and adults to converse away from the chaotic street life. Challenges weren't limited to structural risks or lack of privacy. Crime was rampant in such close quarters, from petty theft to more severe offenses, and safety was never guaranteed. The medieval city was a lively place during the day, but the cover of darkness bred dangers of its own. A distinct aspect of medieval urban living was the sounds. Unlike the relative silence of nights, mornings would begin with the calls of street vendors and persistent clanging from blacksmiths, who often worked from home or nearby wards. These activities, while creating noise, also instilled a rhythm and shared productivity that created a collective identity among city dwellers. In examining the living conditions of medieval cities, it becomes clear that adaptation and survival relied heavily on community. The structural challenges provided a test of human resilience and creativity despite limited knowledge and resources. As we move forward, we next explore how these communities were sustained by examining food, diet, and the challenges inherent in medieval urban sustenance. The bustling economic life of a medieval city reveals the interplay of tradition, craft, and market exchange that sustained urban living. From our vantage point within these dynamic urban centers, it is clear that diverse economic activities not only fueled daily life, but defined the structures of power and community engagement that shaped the medieval landscape. At the core of the urban economy was a network of trades and guilds. Guilds were professional associations of artisans and merchants who oversaw the practice of their trade within a city. Their existence was central to the organization of the medieval economy, influencing everything from the production standards to prices and wages, while concurrently providing social and political influence. Guilds worked to maintain quality in both goods and services, ensuring their members adhered to set standards. This often involved rigorous training phases, where apprentices had to prove their skills before being allowed to sell independently. The progression from apprentice to journeyman, and eventually to master craftsperson, was marked by tests and approvals, underscoring the value placed on craftsmanship. The apprenticeships that defined medieval trades were extended commitments, sometimes lasting several years, where young learners lived with their masters and learned through practical experience. This system not only ensured a high level of expertise, but also fostered a deeply interwoven community, where tradespersons shared ties that went beyond mere commerce. Markets were the heartbeats of medieval cities, vibrant centers where goods from across regions and indeed from distant lands were bought and sold. Peasants from rural areas would bring their produce into the city to barter and trade, connecting urban consumers with agricultural products critical for survival. Market days were significant events, combining commerce with social interaction and offering townsfolk a chance to catch up on news and gossip. Urban economies were further buttressed by the burgeoning trade networks that the medieval era began to establish. Rivers and maritime routes allowed goods to reach far-flung markets, competing with the land-based trade routes that were slowly developing an extensive network across Europe and beyond. Trade fairs were occasions of exchange that attracted merchants from across regions, contributing significantly to city revenues. The role of money was evolving during this period, with currencies beginning to establish more standard forms of trade and commerce. Coinage became increasingly common, though bartering remained a key component of transactions, especially in local markets. The value of goods often shifted with fluctuating supply, demand, and external factors like warfare or plague. In examining the economy of a medieval city, it's clear that social stratification was heavily influenced by access to economic opportunities. Wealthier merchants wielded significant influence, helping to finance public structures or the defenses of the city. They also played a critical role in the rise of a nascent middle-class artisans, minor merchants, and skilled laborers who could hold economic power independent of noble ties. The role of women in the economy was more significant than many contemporary narratives might suggest. While marriage and family roles were central to female life, women engaged in trade and craft, either independently as widows or alongside their husbands. Their contributions, though frequently overlooked in historical accounts, were instrumental in maintaining the fabric of medieval urban economies. Labor in these cities was often physically demanding and perilous, with many engaged in manual trades such as building, blacksmithing, and textile production. The unskilled labor force formed the backbone of city functionality, undertaking tasks in construction work, dock labor, and as household servants. The risks associated with urban employment were high. Artisans faced the challenge of producing high-quality goods amidst fierce competition, with the potential for ruinous debt if they failed. Additionally, working conditions were hazardous, with occupational diseases and accidents not uncommon due to the rudimentary tools and safety standards of the time. Local economies were vulnerable to wider socioeconomic trends, with their fortunes tied to the success of trade routes, the health of agricultural yields, or the impact of military incursions. The rise or fall of trade routes often dictated the economic success of a medieval city, with booming cities becoming centers of culture and advancement against a backdrop of others fading into obscurity. The economic vitality of medieval cities was a microcosm of broader societal shifts. The growth of trade and commerce not only fueled urban life, but laid the groundwork for the transformation from feudalism to the early stages of the modern economic world. Surviving and thriving in such an intricate economic environment necessitated adaptability, perseverance, and a deep sense of community. Lessons as relevant today as they were then. As we transition to the following section, the examination of law and order will reveal how these economic dynamics intertwined with justice and governance to shape medieval society further. Taking a closer look at the intricacies of law and order in a medieval city reveals complex and often brutal systems that sought to impose control over a bustling urban environment. As we navigate through the sometimes chaotic streets of a medieval city, it becomes clear that maintaining order was as much about social control as it was about justice. The legal system of the time was deeply intertwined with the church and the prevailing social hierarchies. Justice was not uniform. It varied significantly depending on one's social rank and the nature of the offense. The king's court, city councils, and church courts each had their jurisdictions, often leading to conflicts over legal authority and jurisdiction. This fragmented system could be confusing, as overlapping authorities sometimes meant contrasting judgments for similar crimes. At the heart of medieval law was the concept of maintaining social harmony, rather than delivering justice as we understand it today. The legal framework was designed to uphold social hierarchies and stay aligned with religious morality, which often implied harsh penalties for those stepping out of line. For most cities, the responsibility of enforcing laws fell to local officials such as constables and bailiffs, who were tasked with keeping the peace. These roles, though vital, were typically filled by local citizens who were neither highly trained nor well compensated. Their effectiveness varied wildly, relying heavily on personal integrity and determination. Medieval cities had their share of criminal activity. Petty crimes, such as theft and pickpocketing, were rampant, exacerbated by the overcrowded living conditions and stark social inequities. Meanwhile, violent crimes, including assault and murder, although less frequent, painted a grim picture of urban living's darker side. Punishments during this era were harsh by modern standards, reflecting both the need for deterrence and the need to publicly reaffirm social order. Public executions, often by hanging or beheading, were common for serious offenses. These gruesome spectacles served as stark reminders of the consequences of law-breaking. Lesser crimes might be met with fines, corporal punishment, or public shaming. The stocks and pillories were omnipresent in city squares, standing as an ever-present threat to those contemplating breaking the law. Such forms of punishment, although often reserved for minor offenders, played a crucial role in communal justice, as public humiliation was seen as a means to reassert community values and deter future transgressions. Torture was another grim aspect of medieval justice, used both as a tool for punishment and as a means of extracting confessions, although this practice seems abhorrent to modern sensibilities. It reflected the limited investigative tools and the prevailing belief that confession was the best proof of guilt. The Church played a unique role in legal matters, frequently operating its courts for cases involving moral transgressions, heresy, and ecclesiastical matters. These courts supplemented secular authorities, acting both as moral guides and as enforcers of spiritual law. Clerics often enjoyed benefit of clergy, a right that allowed them to be tried in church courts, often resulting in more lenient treatment. The laws themselves were often codified in local charters, specifying rights and duties of the citizens. As cities grew, these charters expanded, incorporating more detailed legal frameworks, albeit remaining rigidly tied to the social structures that characterized medieval life. Legal redress for grievances was limited for the lower classes. Access to the legal system was costly and heavily skewed towards the wealthy, who could afford to pay for representation or to offer bribes to officials. For many, justice was an elusive ideal, with practical recourse often limited to seeking remedy through community or guild support. While medieval justice systems appear austere and inequitable, they reflected a societal emphasis on maintaining order and hierarchy. Observing these systems reveals how law and governance were profoundly intertwined with the religious and cultural fabric of the time, emphasizing community harmony over individual rights. Our exploration of medieval urban law and order provides a striking contrast to modern legal systems. Yet, it underscores the critical role that justice, however imperfect, played in shaping urban life. As we delve further, the influence of religion and education will illuminate more of the social dynamics that defined medieval cities. The social structure of medieval urban centers embodies the rigid hierarchies and occasionally the avenues of mobility that defined life in these bustling locales. As we explore the layout of society in a medieval city, it is evident that while one's place was often prescribed at birth, there were pathways, however narrow, for shifting one's social position. Medieval society was primarily structured around three overarching estates: the clergy, the nobility, and the peasantry. However, urban environments added complexity to this categorization, with the emergence of a burgeoning middle class composed of merchants, artisans, and tradespeople, whose influence would grow throughout the medieval period. At the top of the urban social hierarchy were the wealthy merchants and guildmasters. These individuals, often referred to as burgesses or burghers, required shrewd negotiation skills, profitability, and sometimes luck to maintain and expand their status. Their success allowed them to hold civic positions, donate to city projects, and exert considerable influence within their communities. The clergy wielded power that extended beyond spiritual guidance. Their role in education, land ownership, and governance added layers to their societal influence. In cities, church officials often functioned as advisors to city leaders, bridging the gap between secular and spiritual authorities. Artisans and skilled tradespeople constituted the backbone of urban life, making up the lower portion of the emerging middle class. Though not as privileged as wealthy merchants, many of these individuals enjoyed a higher status than the rural peasants, with opportunities for prosperity and stability linked to their craftsmanship. This segment of society was propelled by guilds, associations that afforded artisans protection, education, and economic stability. Guild membership provided not just security and insurance for tradespeople, but also social capital, the ability to pass on one's craft and status to descendants, allowed a measure of upward mobility, albeit limited. For most, however, social mobility was severely limited. Peasants and unskilled laborers faced slim prospects for substantial improvement in their societal position. The labor they provided was indispensable for the daily functioning of the city. Yet their conditions remained harsh, echoing the inequity that defined medieval society. Women's roles were primarily defined by their familial status. Although opportunities for economic independence existed, often through widowhood or in conjunction with family businesses. In some instances, women played influential roles within guilds, especially within industries like textiles. The distinction between urban and rural society was sharp. City dwellers typically enjoyed more freedoms and opportunities than their country counterparts. Cities acted as refuges where serfs could potentially earn freedom from landlord obligations after a year and a day within city walls, offering a rare chance for social advancement. Feudal relationships within cities were less pronounced compared to rural regions. Instead, a communal consciousness often directed city governance. This community type of social cohesion fostered the development of urban laws and regulations, designed to protect residents and manage the competitive nature of city life. Despite the potential to rise through the ranks, societal norms and rigid hierarchies created a society where the status quo was heavily protected by the ruling classes, both secular and religious. Laws and traditions were designed to preserve these structures, reflecting the vested interests of those in power. Yet the seeds of social change were sown as early as the medieval period, with the slow rise in importance of trade and commerce hinting at shifts that would become much more pronounced during the Renaissance and beyond. Understanding medieval urban social structures offers rich insight into the lives of its inhabitants and the forces that shaped their world. This exploration highlights the complexities and systemic barriers within medieval society, while illustrating the resilience and aspirations of its members. As we conclude this exploration of medieval urban life, we reflect on the myriad challenges faced by city dwellers and the societal frameworks that both challenged and sustained them. Religion and education were inextricably linked in the fabric of medieval urban life, playing crucial roles in shaping the worldview and daily practices of city inhabitants. To understand these cities fully, we must explore the pervasive influence of the Church and how educational opportunities, or the lack thereof, defined and structured medieval society. The medieval city was dominated by the towering presence of its church, often the most impressive architectural feature on the skyline. Cathedrals and monasteries were not just religious centers, but places of economic and social power. They owned vast tracts of land, influenced political matters, and sometimes wielded more authority than secular rulers. For the average urban resident, the church was the cornerstone of daily life. It provided a spiritual and social safety net, delivering alms and charity to the poor. Religious festivals punctuated the calendar, with feast days and celebrations drawing whole communities together in prayer and festivity. The church was also a key player in education, although formal educational opportunities were limited compared to today. Monasteries kept the tradition of learning alive in the medieval era. Monks and nuns copied manuscripts and texts, preserving the wisdom of the ancients and ensuring that knowledge was passed to future generations. Monasteries were centers of learning and scholarship, providing the only formal education available to many. cathedral schools emerged in cities to educate clergy, and these schools gradually began to offer educational opportunities to select laymen, especially those who might serve in administrative or clerical roles. Latin was the language of instruction, and curricula focused on the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, which were key to understanding religious texts. It is important to note that education in medieval cities was not accessible to everyone. Opportunities were restricted primarily to the sons of wealthy families who could afford to support their children's studies. For most city residents, practical learning within their trades formed the core of their education, as trade skills were passed down through apprenticeships. Women, typically excluded from formal educational settings, learned domestic skills from their mothers or other female relatives. However, some exceptional women managed to gain education, often through convents, which offered literacy as part of religious training. These women occasionally became influential figures as writers, thinkers, or even leaders within their religious communities. The development of universities in the 12th and 13th centuries marked a significant turning point for education in Europe. Though these institutions primarily served those destined for the church or high-ranking positions in society, universities attracted scholars from across the continent, becoming vibrant centers of intellectual exchange and evolution. Amidst the devotion, reform movements within the church emerged, challenging the status quo and pushing for purity and adherence to religious doctrine. These movements built upon spiritual and educational currents that infused cities with dynamic and sometimes radical ideas affecting all levels of society. Heresy, a significant issue of concern for the church, was often linked to such movements. Heretics were seen as threats to societal order and faced severe penalties. Thus, the church exerted its influence not just in spiritual arenas, but in policing belief and practice within cities. Guilds, with their unique blend of practical training and protective regulations, occupied a special space in education. Many trades required an understanding of numbers, basic reading, and sometimes writing. Guilds, with their mandates on quality and production, ensured that learning extended beyond the strictly academic world into the sphere of crafts and trade. Educational and religious practices in medieval cities weave a complex tapestry of influence and power. The social norms and hierarchies reinforced by these institutions underscore the importance of both schooling and spiritual instruction in medieval society. Though medieval education might seem limited by contemporary standards, it laid foundational stones for later advancements in studies. It fostered an environment where cultural advancements could take root and expand, leading to societal evolutions that would pave the way for modern knowledge frameworks. Overall, understanding the role of religion and education offers critical insights into how medieval city dwellers interacted with both their immediate environment and the broader world. As a community underpinned by faith and learning, the interdependence of these elements forged resilient societies. We turn next to the social structures shaped by these influences, examining how classes and social mobility defined life in medieval urban centers. In the hushed whispers of the medieval city streets, echoing in the narrow alleys and cobbled paths, lies a story as rich and intricate as the tapestries woven in its workshops. To step into a medieval city is to step into a world balanced precariously between beauty and hardship, where the skyline of spires and towers meets the daily struggles of its inhabitants. This introduction serves as a portal to understand the nuances of life during these times and to appreciate the blend of ambition, innovation, and necessity that fueled medieval urban existence. Medieval cities, as bustling hubs of activity, were microcosms of the broader changes sweeping across the continent. They were centers of trade, where merchants from distant lands would converge, bringing with them not only goods, but also news and ideas. These cities thrived on the lifeblood of commerce, driven by an ever-curious and enterprising spirit. However, they were also places of great disparity, where the opulence of the few often contrasted starkly with the deprivation of the many. The layout of a typical medieval city was not just a reflection of architectural preferences, but a symbol of the social fabric woven tightly through its streets. At the heart of the city stood the cathedral or church, its spire reaching for the heavens, symbolizing the omnipresent gaze of the divine. Surrounding it, a labyrinth of narrow streets formed a bustling network of human activity. Markets teeming with traders, craftsmen plying their trades in guild-controlled workshops, and inns filled with travelers' tales. Yet, life in medieval cities was not without its challenges. The rapid growth often led to overcrowding, creating a hotbed for disease and strife. The absence of modern sanitation systems meant that waste disposal was rudimentary at best, adding to the daily hazards of city life. Health risks were abundant, with plagues and famines lurking menacingly, ready to claim their toll on the unsuspecting populace. Despite these hardships, or perhaps because of them, resilience was a burgeoning trait among city dwellers. Communities clung together, fortified by shared experiences and mutual dependencies. The vibrancy of the market square was a testament to the human spirit, adapting and persevering through the ages. Education, too, found its niche within these cities, often disseminated under the watchful eye of the church. While access to formal education remained limited, the seeds of literacy and learning began to take root, slowly transforming the intellectual landscape of the time. The process was gradual, yet inexorable, leading to the gradual emergence of a more informed and ultimately empowered populace. In essence, medieval cities were places of contradiction. They were the heart of human ingenuity and the hub of social struggles. They thrived in the shadows cast by the looming specter of disease and poverty. Yet within those shadows, they fostered creativity, innovation, and resilience. By understanding the fabric of medieval urban life, we gain insights into the underpinnings of the modern world, drawing lessons from a past that, though distant, still reverberates through time. As we delve into the following sections, each focusing on different facets of medieval city life, remember that behind each aspect lies a tapestry of human stories. These stories are marked by ambition and adversity, by toil and triumph. They are a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity, striving to make a life amidst the hum and bustle of stone and mortar, through the winds of change sweeping across the cityscape. Thus, with this introduction, let us embark on a journey through the medieval city, exploring its winding paths and bustling hearts, grasping the essence of an age both distant and connected in its everlasting influence. Through this exploration, we pay homage to those who walked these streets, whose lives, though whispering through history, have shaped the course of civilizations that followed. This comprehensive exploration will pave the way for your vivid transformation into a resident of a medieval city, understanding the daily rigmarole and occasional celebrations that marked the passage of time in these remarkable human settlements. Welcome to the medieval city a cauldron of life, looming with lessons and legends alike. Welcome to history, breathing through its cobblestones. Section 2. Sanitation and Hygiene. As the sun rises over the tightly clustered rooftops of a medieval city, the streets begin to awaken with a cacophony of sounds, the creaking of wagons, the cawing of roosters, and the ever-present murmur of its inhabitants. Life in a medieval city was a constant dance between the mundane and the chaotic, with sanitation and hygiene often suffering the most amidst this bustling reality. In this section, we delve deeper into the sanitary practices and health risks that were an inescapable part of urban life during these times. Medieval cities, unlike their contemporary counterparts, lacked the sophisticated infrastructure necessary to manage waste efficiently. The existing systems, if they could so be called, were rudimentary and often inadequate. The streets themselves were a testament to this inadequacy, with refuse and waste frequently discarded in the open. Inhabitants had little choice but to navigate these obstacles daily as they went about their lives. One significant issue concerning sanitation was the lack of proper sewer systems. Most cities did not have underground sewers. Instead, they relied on open gutters running along the sides of streets to transport waste. These gutters were supposed to carry waste out of the city, often into nearby rivers, where the risk of contamination further escalated. Unfortunately, in reality, these channels frequently became clogged, leading to stagnant, fetid conditions that were a hotbed for disease. Public latrines were scarce, forcing many residents to resort to more creative, yet unsanitary, methods for waste disposal. Chamber pots were common in households, irrespective of their simplicity or sophistication. However, with this convenience came the troubling practice known colloquially as slough, the act of emptying chamber pots onto the streets below, an act that not only exacerbated the foul conditions, but also posed serious health risks. Water supplies were another critical concern. Wells and rivers were primary water sources for drinking, cooking, and bathing, but contamination was frequent due to their proximity to waste disposal sites. The same water that quenched thirst also harbored diseases such as dysentery and cholera, common epidemics that swept through crowded populations with devastating speed and impact. The close quarters and cramped living conditions further compounded these health hazards. Overcrowded housing meant diseases could spread rapidly from one family to another, and with little understanding of germs, preventive measures were rudimentary at best. The infamous medieval plague, known as the Black Death, is perhaps the most well-known epidemic, underscoring the critical state of hygiene in such environments. Originating from fly-infested rats, the disease exploited the unsanitary conditions and claimed millions of lives across Europe. Despite the bleak landscape painted by the struggle for hygiene, efforts, albeit limited, were made to combat these issues. City councils occasionally mandated street cleaning, and ordinances were sometimes passed to control waste dumping. Public bathhouses did exist, offering spaces for people to bathe, though they were plagued by their own set of sanitary challenges. The presence of these bathhouses, however, indicates a basic awareness of the importance of cleanliness, albeit not fully understood in modern terms. Cultural practices also played a role in personal hygiene, albeit varied across regions and classes. Some communities advocated regular bathing, while others considered it a rare luxury. Herbal remedies and potions were popular in combating illnesses, reflecting a blend of superstition and early medicinal practice. Reflecting on this aspect of medieval urban life reveals the resilience and adaptability of its people. They faced head-on the formidable task of maintaining health in environments that constantly challenged them. These efforts contributed, in small but significant ways, to the incremental advancements in understanding public health and sanitation. Through these struggles and small victories, medieval cities laid early groundwork that would ultimately evolve into the more sophisticated and health-conscious urban centers we know today. While their methods may seem crude by modern standards, they offered critical lessons in necessity, innovation, and community resilience. As you spend your next hour wandering through the streets of a medieval city, consider the paths walked by those who came before individuals, trying to forge a life within these vibrant yet hazardous environments. Their stories of survival and adaptation serve as a testament to the human spirit's tenacity in overcoming adversity, even amidst challenges as fundamental and constant as those posed by sanitation and hygiene. Section 3. Living conditions. The shroud of night slowly lifts, giving way to dawn as medieval city streets become alive with the daily hustle and bustle. Within this vibrant tapestry lies the myriad stories of its inhabitants, many of whom make their homes in closely packed quarters, their lives interwoven with the city's pulse. In understanding the living conditions of these people, we delve into a world marked by great ingenuity in the face of constraints, as well as enduring challenges tied to the very essence of urban medieval life. Housing in medieval cities held varied forms, depending largely on one's social and economic standing, ranging from grand manor houses to humble, teetering cottages. The overwhelming majority, however, lived in modest homes, often cramped and bustling with activity. These structures, typically made of timber or wattle and daub, were precariously constructed, prone to the dangers posed by fire and structural instability. Most city residents lived in multi-story buildings, where the ground floors were often used as shops or workshops, while the upper floors served as living quarters. These tight and compact homes were designed less for comfort and more for practicality in maximizing limited space. Privacy was a luxury not often afforded to those who dwelled within these cramped confines, where noise from neighbors and the streets below seeped through walls with little resistance. Overcrowding was a pervasive issue, with families squeezed into single-room dwellings often shared with extended relatives. This environment was rife with challenges, from maintaining cleanliness to managing the spread of illness. Windows, if they existed, were small and covered with oiled cloth or wooden shutters, limiting both light and ventilation, further compounding the struggle for health and comfort. Amidst this daily struggle, small courtyards or communal spaces offered residents a semblance of fresh air and escape from the confining interiors of their homes. These spaces, although rare, served as vital social hubs where community interactions flourished, and children could play under the watchful eyes of their elders. In terms of furnishings, possessions were typically sparse. The primary room, usually equipped for both cooking and leisure, housed simple pieces such as benches, tables, and storage chests. The staple of the living space was a hearth, crucial for both heat and preparing meals. Beds, made with straw mattresses, were shared among family members, emphasizing the communal living style necessitated by scarcity of space. Despite these circumstances, medieval city dwellers demonstrated incredible resilience and adaptability. Community ties were robust, with neighbors often relying on one another for support. and collective gatherings serving to strengthen bonds. Festivals and market days provided occasions for joy and camaraderie, temporarily lifting the weight of everyday burdens. Intricately linked to the city's environment were the roles of women, who often bore the brunt of managing household activities. They were tasked with caring for the home, raising children, and often contributing to the economic activities of their family. Their tenacity and ingenuity in managing these responsibilities amid the challenges of their environment were nothing short of commendable. The architectural style and organization of medieval housing provide us with a window into the past, illuminating the fabric of city life with its blend of connectivity and constraint. The spatial arrangement of these urban areas tells of an era where practical resilience was vital and where homes, though small, were filled with the laughter and toil of their occupants. Thus, as you navigate your hourly immersion into medieval life, envision these places not merely as buildings, but as living entities, each with its own story woven into the larger narrative of human history. They remain testaments to a time of perseverance and communal strength, shaping the landscape of cities whose influence echoes into the present day. Section 4. Food and Diet. The aroma of freshly baked bread mingles with the earthy scent of the marketplace as dawn breaks over a medieval city. The robust sounds of merchants calling out their wares fill the air. As residents emerge from their homes in search of the day's sustenance, within this bustling scene, the medieval diet unfolds, a testament to the ingenuity of city dwellers, who navigated scarcity and seasonality in their pursuit of nourishment. In medieval urban centers, access to food was influenced by various factors, including one's social class, occupation, and the city's proximity to agricultural lands. For most inhabitants, the diet was modest, rooted in necessity and the season's offerings. Bread, a staple food item, was rarely absent from the table, varying in quality and type according to one's means. The wealthier enjoyed fine white bread made from wheat, while the less affluent consumed coarser rye or barley bread, hearty yet less refined. Accompanying the ubiquitous bread were pottages and stews of locally available grains, vegetables, and legumes that simmered over hearth fires. Ingredients varied with the season, making these dishes both practical and adaptable. Vegetables such as cabbage, leeks, and onions were staple ingredients, often paired with beans or lentils to create sustenance that was as filling as it was economical. Meat, though not unheard of, was less frequently consumed by the average inhabitant due to its expense. When available, it was typically pork, an animal that thrived in less than ideal conditions and required minimal feed. Preserved meats, such as smoked or salted pork, along with offal and blood sausage, made occasional appearances in meals. Poultry and fish, particularly salted or smoked varieties, were also common, served as key components of festive or religious feasts. The medieval manner of preservation was integral, ensuring that food didn't spoil and that there was enough sustenance to carry through leaner months. Salting, smoking, and pickling were relied upon heavily to extend the shelf life of meats and vegetables. Cheese and dairy products offered another form of nourishment and variation, though scarcity often dictated their availability. Known for its universality, the medieval diet was also deeply intertwined with religious practices. The Church imposed numerous fasting days where abstention from meat was required, leading to a diet that adapted to these spiritual mandates. This adaptation saw the rise of fish as an important dietary supplement, offering needed protein while adhering to religious rules. The city markets bore witness to the vibrant exchange and occasional scarcity of food items, from local produce to exotic spices brought in by traders. Markets were pivotal in shaping the culinary landscape. Spices such as cinnamon, saffron, and pepper, while expensive, were coveted for their ability to enhance flavors and preserve foods, a luxury indulged in by those who could afford them. Despite these developments, famines and food shortages were recurring specters that loomed over medieval cities. Crop failures, adverse weather, and political turmoil could lead to scarcity, compelling city dwellers to innovate with what little they had. During these times, grains and dried peas became even more crucial, forming the backbone of survival diets. The ingenuity of medieval cooks extended to the use of herbs and wild plants foraged from the surrounding countryside. Nettles, dandelions, and other wild greens spiced seasonally available resources with nutritional supplements and unique flavors, reflecting the resourcefulness of urban communities. In essence, the diet of a medieval city was as diverse as its people. It reflected the intersections of culture, class, and necessity, shaping an intricate web of sustenance practices that nourished body and soul alike. As you wander through your day in a medieval city, imagine the layered and complex relationship shared by its people and their food, a reflection of resilience, heritage, and survival ingenuity laid upon the table. Day after day. Section 5. Work and Economy. As the early morning sun casts its warm glow upon the cobblestones of a medieval city, the air hums with the sounds of industry and the promise of commerce. The city, a vibrant hub of activity, comes alive with the rhythm of labor, underscoring the diverse professions and bustling economy that define its existence. In understanding the essence of work and economy in medieval cities, one is drawn into a world shaped by ingenuity, class, and tradition. The medieval economy was predominantly agrarian, yet urban centers emerged as critical junctions for trade and craftsmanship, contributing significantly to economic development. Within the city walls, an intricate tapestry of trades and professions flourished, each playing a role in the bustling life of the urban community. Guilds were the cornerstone of medieval economic structure. These associations, formed by artisans and merchants, regulated trade and craft to protect mutual interests, maintain standards, and ensure fair competition. Carpenters, blacksmiths, weavers, cobblers, and many other trades had their respective guilds, each wielding significant influence over their profession. Guild membership ensured quality control and offered a network of support for its members, though apprenticeships and strict regulations maintained exclusivity. The market square, typically situated in the heart of the city, was a focal point of economic exchange. Here, goods from countryside farms mingled with imports brought by traders from distant lands. Vibrant stalls displayed a variety of wares, from textiles and pottery to spices and metalwork, evidence of the city's role as a confluence of local crafts and international trade. Trade fairs and seasonal markets brought a further boost to the city's economy, with merchants and buyers converging to barter and trade. These events were not only economic opportunities, but also bustling social gatherings that enhanced the city's cultural vibrancy and provided the opportunity for communities to interact beyond everyday commerce. The economy's reliance on manual labor underscored the prominence of its workforce, which included not only skilled artisans, but also unskilled laborers, forming the backbone of city industries. Laborers often faced harsh working conditions, with long hours and minimal rights. Despite these conditions, their contributions were vital to the running of industries such as construction, transport, and manufacturing. Peasants and rural workers, though largely detached from direct urban economic activity, still played an indispensable role. They provided the agricultural produce essential to city survival, forging a crucial link between the urban and rural economies. Seasonal labor also saw many rural workers temporarily migrate to cities, drawn by the promise of wages amidst agricultural downturn. Women were active participants in medieval economies, often working alongside their husbands or managing businesses in their absence. From brewing ale to weaving and midwifery, women's contributions, though sometimes overlooked, were integral to the economic life of the city. On a broader scale, medieval cities were interconnected through trade routes that facilitated the movement of goods and ideas across the continent. The Hanseatic League, a powerful economic and defensive alliance in Northern Europe, exemplifies the extensive trade networks that cities engaged in to bolster their economies, fostering a flow of goods and capital pivotal to urban development. The fluctuation of medieval economies often mirrored the political and social upheavals of the time. Wars, famines, and plagues could easily disrupt trade routes and labor supplies, with far-reaching impacts on urban economies. Yet, within these challenges lay opportunities for innovation and adaptation qualities that enabled cities to recover and thrive. The story of work and economy in a medieval city is a testament to human enterprise. It reveals a dynamic interplay of tradition and change, a relentless pursuit of improvement amidst adversity, and a collective commitment to the community's prosperity. As you step into this world, imagine the lives intertwined by labor and crafts, the heartbeat of a city driven by the ticking clock of commerce through the ages. Section 6, Law and Order. With the sun rising over the high stone walls of a medieval city, the throb of daily life beats steadily beneath the gaze of its keepers of order. Maintaining law and order in these urban settings was a complex task, fraught with the challenges of limited resources and often rudimentary systems of justice. However, at its heart lay a robust yet evolving framework intended to uphold peace amidst the towering shadow of crime and punishment. Medieval cities, like their modern counterparts, faced the perennial issue of crime, byproduct of dense populations and the myriad pressures of urban life. To counter this, cities employed various measures to maintain law and order, albeit with methods that today might seem crude or severe. The legal system of the time was notably different in its structure and application, characterized by the dual influence of secular authority and ecclesiastical oversight. While secular leaders, such as kings or lords, administered laws pertaining to the day-to-day functioning of society, the Church exerted significant influence over moral and ethical matters, often enforcing canon laws that addressed sins and spiritual offenses. Local courts, known as borough courts or manorial courts, where customary law was practiced, were the primary settings for justice. These courts handled minor disputes and petty crimes, overseen by local officials like bailiffs or reeves, who maintained order and ensured the smooth running of the court process. For serious crimes, such as murder or theft, offenders might find themselves subject to royal courts, where the stakes were higher and sentences more severe. Trial by ordeal was a common practice in determining guilt, often involving physically demanding or painful tests believed to invoke divine judgment. Whether it was retrieving a stone from boiling water or being cast into water to see if one would sink or float, these trials were based more on superstition than fairness, showcasing a reliance on spiritual discernment in justice. Medieval punishments varied widely and were often harsh, reflecting the scarcity of resources to maintain long-term imprisonment. Public executions were a common spectacle, serving as both a punishment and a deterrent to would-be offenders. Stocks and pillories were also used to publicly shame petty criminals, while fines or exile were other common punishments for lesser offenses. The role of a city's watchman, precursors to modern-day police, was to patrol the streets, maintaining public order and deterring crime. Though their presence could provide a semblance of safety, their effectiveness was often limited by numbers and lack of centralized authority. Despite these constraints, urban centers were breeding grounds for a rudimentary form of community policing. The tithings and hundred system required groups of households to collectively ensure peace. Each member was morally bound to one another in maintaining order and was expected to present lawbreakers at court. The intersection of law and commerce was also notable, with mercantile laws governing trade practices in conjunction with guild regulations. Through regulations, trade was policed meticulously to prevent fraud and protect consumer interests. This legal oversight ensured fair dealings and protected the burgeoning economy of the medieval city. The drive towards more formalized legal systems gradually gained momentum with the emergence of professional judges and lawyers, albeit primarily accessible to the elite. This development marked the inception of detailed law codes and an evolving understanding of justice, setting the stage for modern legal principles. In the end, the affordances and limitations of medieval law provide a complex tapestry of human experience, hinting at the deeply ingrained social values and societal structures of the time. Navigating the intricate relationships and power dynamics between justice and common struggles reflects on our collective journey towards a more comprehensive and fair jurisprudence. As you walk through the echoes of this past world, imagine the weight of justice as it was dispensed from these courts, and ponder how it set the stage for future legal systems. Each verdict and punishment meted out whispered through the annals of time, reminding us of the intricate balance between authority, moral belief, and the human condition. Section 7. Religion and Education. In the heart of a medieval city looms the grandeur of its church steeple, a beacon both spiritual and physical, guiding the life of the community beneath it. As dawn stretches its golden tendrils across city streets, the church bells call faithful souls to gather, echoing a way of life deeply enmeshed with religious practice. Within this tapestry, the roles of religion and education in medieval cities reveal layers of influence extending far beyond theology, shaping societal norms and rearing the seeds of enlightenment. Religion in medieval cities was not merely a matter of personal faith, but a central organizing force in society. The towering cathedrals and modest parish churches stood as monuments of devotion and power, their architectural splendor testament to the spiritual zeal of the period. They served as centers of community, where citizens gathered not only for worship, but also for social interaction, fostering a framework of shared belief and support. The clergy, comprising priests, bishops, and other ecclesiastical figures, wielded considerable influence in both spiritual and secular matters. Their authority extended into governance, healthcare, and education, with many clergy members assuming roles as advisors to monarchs and lords. This synergy between church and state underscored a time when spiritual guidance shaped policy and decisions that touched every citizen. Education, while largely in the purview of the church, laid the groundwork for intellectual pursuit beyond religious studies. Cathedral schools and monastic schools were the epicenters of learning, nurturing scholars in the disciplines of theology, philosophy, and the liberal arts. The promise of literacy and scholarly achievement, though limited to the privileged few, sparked the beginning of intellectual emancipation. Monasteries served as early centers of higher education, where scribes diligently copied manuscripts and preserved vast repositories of knowledge. The monastic commitment to learning showcased the potential for educational outreach beyond ecclesiastical realms, igniting cultural and intellectual enrichment that would blossom over centuries. The emergence of medieval universities marked an ambitious step forward in the quest for knowledge. Institutions such as Bologna, Paris, and Oxford became hubs of intellectual exchange, offering a structured educational experience and conferring degrees to scholars capable of rigorous discourse and debate. These universities forged essential pathways for critical thought, scientific exploration, and cultural dialogue. Nevertheless, education remained a privilege afforded to select groups, primarily young men, often from affluent backgrounds, poised to occupy roles within the church or governance. Yet, despite these limitations, whispers of change thrived, bolstered by growing literacy, which seeped beyond elite circles, culturally transformative waves reaching broader social strata. The bridge between religion and science, while fraught with tension, fostered dialogues, contributing significantly to learning and advancement. Church patronage spurred on studies in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, fields that, while considered secular, merged theory and practice, benefiting spiritual and earthly spheres. As people's lives intertwined with doctrine, moral teachings shaped by religious institutions set societal codes of conduct. The Church's authority guided personal and communal ethics, intertwining with secular laws to form the fabric of societal structure, underscoring the profound nature of religious influence in everyday life. Beyond the cathedrals, smaller guild schools and private tutors offered education to children of craftsmen and merchants, broadening the reach of literacy and laying groundwork for the flourishing vocational guilds within cities aspiring towards an educated urban populace. Within this vast intersection of religion and education, medieval cities sowed seeds of Enlightenment consequences felt well beyond the era. By contemplating the city's multifaceted spiritual and intellectual landscape, we honor those who walked beneath the steeple's protective reach, whose lives, beliefs, knowledge, and innovations echoed through history, lighting the path towards modern understanding and discovery. Section 8. Social structure. As the day unfolds in the medieval city and its bustling energy hums through the streets, it is the people, from the cobbler mending shoes to the lady of the manor, that collectively animate the social structure underpinning urban life. Medieval cities were mosaics of class and status, depicting a social hierarchy deeply rooted in tradition and aspiration. In exploring the intricacies of this social fabric, we witness the nuanced interplay of class, mobility, and identity, that defined daily existence. At the apex of the social hierarchy sat the nobility and aristocracy, whose wealth and influence were drawn from extensive landholdings and noble lineage. Their estates and castles loomed at the city's periphery, symbols of power and privilege manifest in stone and mortar. Nobility lives marked by hereditary titles and influence in governance, serving as patrons to the arts, and engaging with global commerce, which extended their reach. Beneath the nobility lay the burgeoning merchant class, perhaps medieval city's most dynamic social group, building wealth through trade and innovation. Merchants harnessed the power of commerce to carve pathways into greater social strata. While the nobility's power was inherited, the merchant class exemplified a different potential, one of social mobility driven by shrewdness in trade and accruing city-focused influence. The artisans and craftsmen, organized into various guilds, constituted the core of city life. Ranging from masons to weavers, these skilled laborers were the city's heartbeat, creating and providing essentials for everyday living. Their craft was their identity, guarded fiercely by guilds which set regulations, maintained quality, and ensured fair commerce within the urban environment. The lower rungs of the social ladder were occupied by laborers and peasants, whose roles were aptly tied to hard labor, menial work, often unskilled, whose value lay in physical contribution to the city's needs. While opportunities for mobility were limited, the city's demand for labor expanded occasionally, offering subtle changes within established norms. Women in medieval cities navigated a complex social terrain, often defined by their relationship to men, be it father, husband, or son. Women's roles primarily revolved around the domestic sphere. Despite these constraints, many women wielded considerable influence as merchants, brewers, or artisans, with widows sometimes assuming roles of economic significance left by deceased husbands. Religious institutions provided another layer to social life, distinct yet overlapping with formal hierarchies. The clergy, monastic orders, and church-operated altruistic activities were respected, acting as mediators between social classes, utilizing spiritual doctrine to leverage support from both noble sponsors and the city's poorest. Interwoven with these structures was the ever-present aspiration for betterment, a badge of humanity transcending time. Social mobility, although rare, was not impossible. Individuals occasionally ascended the ranks through marriage, merchant success, or ecclesiastical favor, proving that ambition and timing could sometimes transcend the rigidity of birthright. Medieval social order was further complicated by the roles of immigrants, traveling traders, and displaced populations, providing cultural exchanges and new perspectives that could rejuvenate urban life. These groups, although sometimes marginalized, played pivotal roles in fostering a blend of ideas, enriching the social tapestry through diversity. Reflecting on the intricate class systems of medieval cities unveils patterns of both stratification and unity. Shared customs and public celebrations often bridged social divides, drawing citizens together under unified purposes such as religious observances or civic festivals, underscoring collective identity even amid stark divergences. Looking back on the echoes of history, the social structure of medieval urban centers sketches a portrait of human adaptability and striving. It invites reflection on the legacies of those who navigated this world of hierarchies and aspirations, charting courses that carried societies toward modern ideologies of equality and opportunity. As you step through the pathways once bustling with this vibrant array of identities, Marvel at how their unfolded lives contributed to the enduring saga of human endeavor.